welcome once again to Strange Planet. And on this episode, my guest is going to share his views on how the universe really works based on his study and research of Einstein's unified field theory. He'll discuss how the amplifications of Einstein's theory can be used to travel through space, renewable energy, and future technology. We'll also discuss how to break the light speed barrier, how to create an anti-gravity field, and much more. Mark Fiorentino is a self-taught metaphysician who worked in the field of high-tech industry. He worked as an electrical technician at Harris Government Systems, working on a killer satellite missile guidance system, and then at IBM as a computer programmer. At the age of 10, Mark was fascinated by the works of Albert Einstein, and particularly his quest to construct a unified field theory. 55 years later, his scientific research has completed the theory, but he's also opened up the door for a few others as well. Conspiracy theories about alien technology, NDEs, and a theory of super relativity. Mark has earned himself the title of Master of Reality. That is, in fact, the name of his book, Master of Reality. Mark Fiorentino, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
Thank you, Richard. It's good to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
So the theory of general theory of relativity, which is a theory of gravitation,
Yeah.
which says that there isn't this invisible force that attracts one object to another. It's mass warping space and time, and so combining that gravitational theory with his a theory of electromagnetism. Is that Maxwell's theory?
Yeah, yes. And he kind of did that a little bit with special relativity. But yes, the real trick was combining electromagnetism and gravity, and they will emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field.
Okay, so with Maxwell's theory, this is taking me back. So you've got electrical particles.
Uh, Basically, light was the scheme, and Maxwell envisioned that there was an ether or a medium that they were moving through, and so based his equations on that model. And as it turns out, they were right. It works. And so basically, the particles were not thought of, light particles were not thought of as particles at that time. They were waves. And we've learned over time that they are both wave and particle. But at his time, they were in the mode of thinking that they were waves, and his equations kind of evolved from sound wave equations, and then he got into the study of the permittivity and permeability of space, when she developed a formula that defined the speed of light. And C equals 1 over the square root of permittivity times permeability, and lo and behold, you get the right answer when you do that equation. So he was right again, based it on a model that uses an ether. I want to stress that point.
Okay, so these electrically charged particles, they're producing electrical and magnetic fields, alternating, right? Electrical and magnetic fields.
A photon is a perfect example. Basically, they all are. They start out, as I've studied, they're all have a structure that's formed from electrical charge, the Coulomb force. All of them, no exceptions. I don't care who wants to say that. When you dig down deep and you get to the foundation, they are all charged particles. The next thing that happens is the charge structure causes motion, which I have learned and called the slip wave. I've modified the slip wave since the last time we've talked. We're now up to slip wave 2.0, which I think will be the final version, which details the cause of particle motion. And the paper I'm working on now is going to get into all that with the math.
Okay. Now, I don't want to get too lost in the math because that's way beyond my pay grade. But so why this idea of unification in physics? Like was Einstein looking to combine a gravitational theory with electromagnetism? Like, what does one have to do with the other?
Um, it was always his intuitive feel that they were just simply different bendings or aspects of the fundamental field, which at that time, before the year 1905, was considered to be the ether. And even though he didn't like to admit it, his equations in general relativity imply there's something out there in space that is a fundamental field. But because of his theory of special relativity and the Michelson-Morley experiment, he backed away from the ether theory. But in some speeches, he does say there is an ether, especially in the speech in 1920 that he made for Henrik Antoon Lorentz, his mentor, his teacher, basically, admitting, yeah, there must be, because general relativity proves that something out there is bending,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you can't bend something that doesn't exist.
That was my next question. Yeah, we call it space, and we
Right.
think it's empty and it's nothingness. But if a mass is warping it, then what exact it can't, as you say, you can't warp nothing. So it's warping something called ether.
Yeah.
So what exactly is ether?
Well, the best description, I think the one that was correct, really started with Maxwell, but it really solidified, quite literally, that's a good way, solidify, with Hendrik Antoon Lorentz and Einstein both at the same time kind of really believed in the ether. And I don't know how much they were conversing about it before the Michelson-Morley experiment, but Einstein was aware of the Michelson-Morley experiment, which was designed to prove the ether. So what the ether really is, or what they thought it was at that time, and I believe Lorentz interpretation is correct, was a quasi-elastic solid. And so what does that mean? Quasi means that you can deform it, bend it a little ways this way, you could twist it clockwise, counterclockwise, stretch it or compress it. Uh, Quasi-elastic means you can do that. And the quasi means that when you remove the force that does that to it, it snaps back into a flat Euclidean geometry. And solid means this, something that is continuous. Don't think of it as like wood, steel, iron. It's just something out there that's continuous. It's everywhere. There are no parts. It's all one. And that was what Lorentz based his Lorentz transformations on. Turned out they were right, because Einstein used those same transformations in theory of special relativity. So that's basically what the ether was thought to be. And I revived it saying that it is real. It does exist. It has to. Otherwise, general relativity doesn't even make any sense, because there has to be something out there that's deforming. There's stress tensors, and even physicists will say, well, what are we stressing? There's got to be something there. The mathematics strongly implies a geometry, even though Einstein was telling people, don't take my equations literally. Well, you should, because they are literally describing a geometry.
So if you can twist ether or space, and you can, I don't know, fold it, perhaps, does that not then, would that not then prove the existence of other dimensions? I mean, if you can fold space, on back onto itself and so forth, are you not creating other dimensions?
Uh, Other dimensions are accessed, I believe, in my book, I cover it slightly. I was asked to write a chapter about portals and stargates, and I was given some hints actually from a psychic, which some words to look up on the internet. And one of them was fractal lenses, which I've never heard of. And I studied physics a lot. And sure enough, there is a thing called a fractal lens. And the only thing I knew before I started that chapter was that whatever it is that if you want to get to other dimensions, other times, you're going to have to accelerate, cause oscillations in space, in a spatial area at ultra high frequencies, way beyond what we normally use for radio. And I mean, beyond terahertz, thousands terahertz. And the only way to do this is to speed up the light particle. And guess what material substance can do that? Fractal lenses, which are made of metamaterials, which adjusts. He's all linking back to Maxwell now, who said C equals 1 over the square root of permittivity times permeability. If you shrink those numbers down, they're very tiny to start with. If you shrink them down, the speed of light goes up if you compute that equation. So that's what's needed, because these guys on the internet, this is real, this is happening, this is live. They're claiming that their metamaterials that they designed in a lab, they're material scientists, when they shine light through them, it goes infinitely fast. You can read this on ResearchGate. So there is the material that was cleverly created that modifies by somehow arranging the molecules and the atoms in this material. They could drop permittivity and permeability and then get some very interesting effects. Well, that's what you do if you want to break the light speed barrier. You have to have what I call a slipwave spatial bias drive. You have to bias the space. You don't bend it. A lot of people want to do this bending and folding stuff. Forget it. Put that out of the way. What you need to do is twist, separate. When you twist, if you look at the mechanical, this is all mechanics. When you look at something that you twist, like silly putty, you put a picture on it, you look at it, you twist it, that image will stretch apart. The more you twist it, the more it stretches apart. The more it stretches apart, in space, if you do that to space physically by using either an electrostatic field or a magnetic field, they both do this. They cause a rotation or a twisting deformation that causes permittivity and permeability to drop. Then you have what's necessary to break the light speed barrier, not just propulsion, and you're going to get that with a configuration of from the south to north pole, where you have the anode, the thing that holds the positive charge up. This is taken from drawings and sketches that was left behind by Thomas Townsend Brown, the electrogravitic model.
Mm-hmm.
He noticed that when you put a capacitor with the anode up and the cathode down, you had lift. When you reversed it, it went down. So, and the same thing with the magnet. You can do it either way. So there's two methods that can be used to bias space with fields of force, either magnetic or electrostatic, that will combine everything you need to break the light speed barrier, everything that a civilization of class 1 like us needs to get off this planet and get to anywhere they want in the galaxy, or the universe for that matter, in a very short period of time. If you wanted to go to Proxima Centauri, 4.2 light years, it would take you 4.2 years one way at the speed of light. That's not good enough. Using the slipwave technology that I'm describing, and I'm going to describe in detail in my next paper, you can get there in minutes, and that's practical. That's what's necessary. Otherwise, civilizations, how are the aliens getting here? Obviously, they're getting here, and they're here very frequently.
Right.
They have to have this technology or beyond it.
Okay, so let me try and illustrate this for myself and maybe for my listeners. Make sure
Sure.
I'm understanding. So
Okay.
this, what did you call that? A spatial drive?
Spatial bias drive.
Yeah, this a slipwave bias drive.
Yes.
Okay, could I liken that to let's say I've got a cup of coffee and I've just put my milk in there and I want to stir it. So if I'm stirring it, that's similar to twisting the ether, right?
Uh, Somewhat, but it's a liquid. So the dynamics and the mechanics of the liquid are not the same. This is a very important point. The twist is persistent. It's you might say it's quasi-rigid. So, and that's another way of describing the ether. So when this happens, you got a structure that's rigid actually and deformed. And so you have stresses on the medium, and these stresses create motion in particles. That's how they all move. You ask a physicist how they move, uh, they'll they'll stammer.
Right, right.
But going back to your, yeah, you can't use that because the liquid doesn't hold the form. It just, keeps swirling around.
Got it, got it. And it's all
So
contained inside a cup.
you want to think of it more like a rubber band, and you twist it and you
Got
see
it.
the twist, and it has the stresses and tensions in it now from the force of you're the external force that twists it.
Right.
In our case, it's the magnetic or the electrostatic field that'll do it and hold it as long as that field is there.
Okay, so then the vehicle that's traveling through space or the ether, does it have more to do with not the acceleration of the vehicle? In other words, it's not the vehicle transversing through space. It's almost as if the space is it's space that's moving, right? Rather than the vehicle, or do I have?
It's possible to think of it because it's tricky because you got to realize what particles are. They are configurations, patterns, wave particle patterns in space. They're persistent, from one spot to another. So what's really moving? It's a pattern. The space is remaining stationary, but the pattern, the special twisted pattern that has a configuration, a structure, and this has already been proven in experiments concerning the photon. You change the structure of the photon, you change the speed. So it's the structure of the particle that causes its velocity in a particular direction. And I want to get into all the details because that's 15, 20 minutes of detailed explanation. But just leave it, twist, configuration is now proper, go. And that structure is what causes the motion. And what's really moving? The space is continuous and stationary. The configuration is moving within the space. It's consubstantial with it. It is the same thing as the space that it occupies. It's configured, though. It's altered. And so when you do that, you cause mechanical stresses and attractions and repulsions. So what's really moving in a spaceship, all the particles that are all compiled in there and all bonded together, they're all fields. And those fields are moving as a whole through space. And that's why you feel things like inertia and so forth, because all the tiny little particles are experiencing resistance to motion when they're not in a slip wave, which is an important point to bring up. Normal rockets, you'll feel a pressure pull back as that thing accelerates upward or through space. And you can't really have that when you're breaking the light speed barrier. You'll be killed
Right.
very quickly.
That was my next question. That, and also, I mean, what happens to mass as you approach the speed of light?
Well, normally mass increases as you approach the speed of light. If you use the Lorentz transformation for mass increase, I did it as a kid. I used to calculate, mass is getting higher. Look at, the speed of light, it's infinite.
Yeah, that's a stumbling block, obviously.
Yeah. Well, that's a big problem. So you could never, ever use rockets. Even if you could build one that would use almost all the energy in the world to get it up to that speed, the resistance as you go faster and faster is causing you to burn more and more to get that further acceleration. If you could get there, your ship would flatten, literally compressed in the motion of direction. So as you're moving forward, it's getting closer and closer until it's a flat disk, and you would be pressed back. You wouldn't be able to move or think or whatever, because all the atoms and everything, all the electrons are starting to go, instead of in their orbitals, are flattening out into like little circles. The whole thing would be very bad. That's why you need the slip wave, because what you do is when you disengage all the geometry of your ship, your body, everything that's moving at the speed of light, it has to be in another realm, and you separate it out like it would be in a bubble of almost nothingness, so that your ship weighs nothing at all, just like a photon. A photon can go the speed of light because it's massless. You have to make the ship massless. Otherwise, you'll have all the effects of the Lorentz transformations. Your mass will increase, but not if you use a spatial bias drive. You twist space, you expand it, permittivity and permeability drop, and now you don't have inertia. And that's why these guys can fly around in these spaceships, these UFOs, and make right turns at 90 degrees, going 3 or 4 or 5,000 miles an hour. We would be turned to mush. Inertia has to be canceled. And that's the only way I know of how to do it. And that should answer your questions. That you're right. If you just go into high speed, near the speed of light or beyond, and you don't, if you're not inside the slip wave, that spatial bias field, it's instant death. And so it's very dangerous to do this. You have to build a ship with redundant circuits in it. It has to know if one of the magnets or one of the capacitors, the emitter parts of it, are going to fail. And you have to know before they fail. Because if you drop out of that warp field, you're instantaneously dead, and there's no calling the Scotty for help. It has to catch, turn on the other circuit, bring it up alongside, so that that doesn't happen and you don't die very quickly. So it's an important design factor.
Mark, we'll take a quick time out. Master of Reality stays with us. Don't go away.
Every new season, we find a reason to improve our lives and our health. And C60 Evo organic edible oils deliver noticeable benefits quickly. A spoonful in the morning delivers energy and endurance all day long. And I sleep deeper and wake up feeling refreshed because C60 ESS60 works. Carbon 60 received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1996 when it was used for industrial applications. C60 Evo's ESS60 is a breakthrough technology upgrading C60 to be safe for human and pet consumption. ESS60 has been called a miracle molecule because of the physical and mental benefits people are enjoying. Their lab has a proven track record of 31 years and thousands of happy customers across the world, just like me. So treat yourself, your friends, and your family to C60 Evo and use my link, EVRS, to get 10% off your first order. Again, my link, EVRS, to get 10% off your first order.
And we're redefining reality with Master of Reality, Mark Fiorentino. The website, it's in the episode notes, the link, but I'll give it to you as well. super-relativity.com. Super-relativity.com. So your quest, your 55-year quest for the unified field theory solution it's complete.
Paper 2 is completed. You see, it's gone beyond that paper. Now that paper number 2 is the one that's the unified field theory paper, and it describes gravity 1, the same gravity that Einstein dealt with. Only now I give you the mechanical solution with mathematics that says basically, I know exactly the source of the gravitational field, and I know exactly what it's made of and how it works. But then I discovered in my experiments in my lab, in my garage, I have a small room there with a lot of equipment, that there's a second type of gravity. I call it gravity 2. If somebody comes up with a better name, great. It's non-contractive gravity. And I was surprised by this. And along with anti-gravity, and now I made measurements and I thought I had proof, evidence that I have an anti-gravity machine because I built what I called the magneto vortex drive, a series of magnets in a ring spiraling around, controlled by a microprocessor. I designed it. I built it all by hand. I hired a guy to write the software to control the magnets, and I tested for a drop. I measured something, just like I said in my book I was going to do. I finally did it. I was waiting for somebody else to do it. I said, then you know what? I'm going to do it. So I got a wooden ball and I started measuring, and sure enough, it got lighter when the field was, North Pole or whatever. And then when I flipped it around, it got heavier. I said, that, I didn't expect that. And I started studying. He says, that means that gravity somehow is affected by the poles of the charge or magnets. And I went back in history and I found an error because the drawings say for a magnet, if you look at a magnet and it shows the fields, it shows the arrow lines of force coming out of one end and going into the South Pole.
Right.
Therefore, I should have seen anti-gravity with the North Pole facing up, but I think it was like the reverse. And I'm still going over this because the whole reverse thing is what I should have seen is like the reverse. So I said, how did they define those lines of force? When I went back and looked, it went all the way back to Edison's time, and he arbitrarily picked the directions of the line of force, the rotation, everything was based on current going in the wrong direction. And they never bothered to change it. It was 150 years went by before Rutherford in his experiments determined that there was electrons and they were actually flowing from the negative pole to the positive, not that other way around. So basically, all the lines of force and all the drawings are wrong, according to my determination, because the direction's important. Because going inward, if the North Pole is causing the gravity or whatever to pulling it down, it's got to actually have the lines of force going inwards. That's the attractive. So that makes sense that if the lines of force are going inwards at the North Pole, it's going to be pulled up. That's gravity 2. And at the other end, the line of force, the arrows are pointing out, it's going to be pushed up. So it works. You'll get thrust when it's configured in this way with the line of forces drawn properly. And sure enough, going back into history, I found that Thomas Townsend Brown said, hey, if you have the anode up and a capacitor that he specially built and the cathode down, there's lift. And when you flip it, it goes down. And I says, oh, here's somebody that's on to something. It's agreeing with my measurements. And then I went back and I reviewed, who I used to think was a fake, but he's not? Bob Lazar.
Area 51.
That guy told the truth. There was things that always bothered me in there. He kept talking about the gravity wave, and I'm saying, what? You need anti-gravity to fly. What is the deal with gravity? He says, well, gravity was coming out of one end of the emitter, and anti-gravity was like almost an afterthought to him, was coming out of the other side. Again, that matches what I'm measuring. So now I'm compiling evidence from history that confirms this. Now, scientists, would they accept this? No. They're closed-minded, and they're not going to accept any of that evidence. But I'm accepting it, and I'm thinking now I'm going to develop the math, and now I have the equations, and I'm putting them into this new paper, and I'm going to demonstrate how you're going to get thrust, and you're going to generate mass using a magnetic field or an electrostatic field. You're actually going to generate, it's not really mass. Gravity 2 it can't work like gravity one, and you have a spaceship that flies at beyond the speed of light. Space has to be stretched both ways, but what it is, it's being offset, pushed up, pushed up, pushed up, pushed around the down, up, 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 down, down, down. That's how it works. So there's an even stretch, no contraction, because gravity one, you have a source of gravity and you have the field all pointing inward toward the source. And that is affected by inertia and so forth. But this other one isn't. It's perfect. So you can actually have a spacecraft be standing in it and accelerating this way or that way if you have an emitter on the sides or whatever, hauling butt, and you won't feel, you will be like you're not moving at all. You'll just either be a slight pull of the floor if you're underneath the emitters that are underneath you, if you're above them, or you could be floating. And in many cases, they're going at, thousands of times the speed of light. And as far as they're concerned, if they're not looking out the window, they're just floating free in space. No inertia at all.
All right, we're going to take another time out. So you've solved superluminal speed. You've figured out how to generate an anti-gravity field. What is our civilization going to look like with this technology? Back with the master of reality, Mark Fiorentino. Stay with us.
November reminds us to be thankful and focused on boosting our radiant health before winter. And I use a potent remedy that's improved the quality of my life and deepened my sleep as well. I take C60 Evo olive oil every morning, and I have a lot more energy and mental focus all day long. My workouts are easier, and I have a lot more endurance. If you're into competitive sports, this is a game changer. Health is our greatest wealth, and Pura C60 ESS60 really works. ESS60 is a breakthrough technology delivering the carbon-60 miracle molecule for humans and pets. Check out the C60 Evo holiday gift collections for everyone on your list. They make amazing skin, lip, and hair repair serum that deliver noticeable results quickly. C60 Evo's lab has an impressive track record of 31 years and, of course, my personal recommendation. You deserve the best remedies on Earth, and so do those you love. Buy direct from the lab and upgrade your life today. Use my code EVRS to save 10% off your first order. Again, my code EVRS and save 10% off your first order.
Mark Fiorentino is with us. Master of Reality is the book that's available at Amazon and wherever fine books are sold. The website, super-relativity.com. I was going to ask you, you were saying that the scientists will never go for this. So I guess a peer-reviewed article in a reputable journal is probably out of the question with this?
I have a journal. Fortunately, the internet allows people who want to publish. They don't, people can read the stuff. It's free to upload. There's no, we're going to block you. If you go through the work of writing something, it's ResearchGate, and there's loads of scientists, loads of them that are uploading stuff every day there. And I've uploaded my stuff there. So I have that journal, and maybe there'll be a few others I can find. That's where I need staff. I need somebody to look for these things, find, let's do some of this work, but because I'm doing it all myself. And
so you're going to open source?
Yes. Yeah, it's open source. One of the problems with all of this is, and why it's being suppressed and everything, is because so many people, everybody wants to rule the world. I have no interest in that. My interest is in saving the world. And if we have this technology and we don't abuse it, and we don't use it to make weapons and attack other beings or ourselves or whatever, because we can make some terrible weapons with this technology, because you can make a missile that can essentially be delivered in a matter of seconds. There's no defense. There's no shooting that down. There's no Star Wars thing. Unless you have equal technology that can then deliver yours, and a few seconds later, all you have is mutual destruction. But having this technology, you can make super ambulances that don't have to go through traffic. They just go up, point to the direction they're going, within seconds they're there and down. So lives will be saved. Instead of having to go through traffic, go through lights, get around cars, if it takes them 10 minutes to get there, it'll take them 20 seconds the other way or less. You know, as long as it takes to get in the car, punched in the coordinates and get there. We can make drones that can go in outer space and build project, what I've outlined in my book, Project Sunshade, that we can alter the climate. We could cool it back down by building a blinding system. We could we could go to other planets. We can colonize very easily because we could get there in a reasonable amount of days, few hours, whatever, you know, we want to take, you know, to go there safely, whatever, you know, how much energy we have that we can put into the drive system to get us there. We can go 10,000, 20, 30,000 times the speed of light. You're going to get places in a hurry when you're going that fast. And you get there, you can drop off the equipment, you can start building. You maybe have, if there's any intelligent beings there, we can communicate with them, have an agreement, and start our own bases there just in case something goes wrong here. So all of this stuff has great potential for the benefit of mankind in short and long term. The biggest benefit is we're going to meet other races. You know, it's going to be really hard to cover up there's other races when we're going to other planets and we're meeting them there. It would require every company that builds these things and ships them, you know, no talk agreement, you know. So it would just be a mess. The greater benefit to humanity is to start mingling and getting to know the advanced races and raise our level of consciousness toward a more spiritual consciousness where love is the thing that dominates, not world power, greed, and fear.
Tell me about, in the book, you provide a description of the stellar converter, which is able to tap the power of black holes.
Yeah, I just came up with the idea because I saw our end. I saw what was going to happen to planet Earth eventually, either because the sun burns out, that one, the stellar converter is not going to really help, but we're eventually going to collide into the great attractor, which is going to turn out to be a massive sized black hole, along with Andromeda and all the other groups in our galactic cluster. We're all going to hit there about 4.5 billion years. There's a problem. Well, if I want the Earth to live beyond that, which it probably won't anyway because of the sun problem, I thought, well, the universe is going to die because eventually we're seeing now, and astronomers have noticed that great galactic clusters are all moving toward these Titan-sized black holes. There's other ones. Even the great attractor is being pulled to an even bigger one, and we're all being pulled to that supercluster. So we not just Earthlings, but all species have a problem with black holes because eventually they're going to grow into size, grow bigger, and that's all there's going to be left. And then, according to my theory, all the matter and energy combined, that's going to be just enough to trigger another big bang and it'll start over again. Okay, that's fine and dandy, but if you wanted to survive that somehow or prevent it, you have to do what God built into the design. You have to deconstruct the black hole, and that's what a stellar converter does. It basically uses the anti-gravity technology in concentric rings of coils that drop to the poles, north and south pole of the spinning black hole. You drop it in there, and then when it makes contact with the surface, which is made of solid neutronium, it releases the gravitational field that's binding and holding it, and it goes rocketing up the center of the tubes out into space as neutronium plasma, which converts to hydrogen within 15 minutes. Perfect. That's just what you need to start building new stars. Now, you might want to have a collector on the other end in the form of a neutron sphere that will form another star, because according to my theory, that's how all stars are formed, with neutron spheres that emerged from the Big Bang, because the Big Bang, the big cosmic egg, was made out of solid neutronium that ejected plasma and many spheres, which I call the seeds of life. They form the galaxies, the stars, and the planets, including Earth. So I'm saying there's a neutron sphere in the sun. There's a neutron sphere, a smaller one in the middle of the Earth. And we already know, science already knows, there's a solid in the center of the Earth, and there's something solid in the sun. How did they get there? And why would that, at extraordinary temperatures that are there, why would that thing not be molten or gaseous? It's not. It's the thing that's causing the fusion process by virtue of its incredibly intense gravitational pull. So the stellar converter just eliminates the black hole so that you don't fall into it. But it would take advanced civilizations working together to build one of these things. It's just a whole lot of trouble. And you might be able to get rid of a black hole, and but they're so huge. And then I just said, okay, this is, if you wanted to do it, this is how you do it. And it just so happens that at the very edge of outer space, where our telescopes have looked, they've discovered these quasars. And there's something out there that's ejecting streams of light from both the North and the South Pole of some gigantic black hole. Black holes are not known for shooting stuff out of them. So you have to have, according to my theory, an immense magnetic field. So they looked at these black holes. These are scientists, not me in my lab. They're saying, hey, you know what? The light coming out of those quasars is polarized. That means there's a magnetic field there. So it's confirming what I'm saying. Well, maybe some advanced civilization has already tried this and is using it to build stars. And that's what the stellar converter does. So in their local area, they found a suitable sized black hole, and they're all different sizes. Some got thousands and tens of thousands and even millions of solar masses worth of mass inside of them. You could build a lot of stars with that. But I'm thinking one of two ways that could happen. There's either a huge amount of ion material circling it that's creating the immense magnetic field that's touching down into the rotating sphere of neutronium and causing it to eject, or somebody has built one of these
Remarkable.
converters.
Last question, Mark. How far away, given the right amount of resources, would we be from building a slipwave spatial bias drive?
I'm thinking we already have it. And I know that for sure. How do I know that for sure? You see a UFO? No. But I know somebody who did. Somebody who approached me and contacted me and wants to remain anonymous. Read my book and he says, you're right. I've seen it and my friend has seen it. And then he told me the story. They saw one in the desert of the United States back in the 70s. They were able to get really close to it within touching distance. It was no bigger than like a Volkswagen, this thing. And they saw markings on it. And the markings he said he saw was U.S. Air Force experimental. So I know for sure they had it back in the 70s. They've reversed engineered these. Do I know that they understand the theory? Well, I know Bob Lazar didn't. Not my theory. It was like magic to him and the guys that were working on it. Whether they met an alien who tells them this and informs them of the whole theory, or I found that the people, and I've interviewed many, many people who claim to have gone on board space vessels. Funny thing, they seem to have no clue and they never get told how the spaceship actually works. And it's frustrating to me. The only thing they can say is that the super advanced ones, they use their intellect, their psychic abilities to power the ship and to create the fields. Now, that's a level of intelligence that's almost godlike to us, to have that much psychic ability. I believe it's possible that they have that kind of telekinetic capability, and that would make sense to me. They're literally the masters of the universe, because they could use that same ability to break through to other dimensions, time travel, do all that stuff. But for us lowly barbarians down here on the earth, we need entry-level technology. And do we have that technology? I believe we do. I believe some of the UFOs that we're seeing, maybe the ones out on the east and west coast, the Tic Tacs, that might be ours.
Maybe most of them. Maybe most of them.
Maybe most of them. I don't know, but I know some of them are, and they've done a great job at keeping it secret, by the way.
Mark, we're going to have to leave it here, but I'm going to have you back on, because I'd love to talk about, much more. Stargate technology. We didn't get into, the actual primary forces of nature. So much more. The signature of God. Much to discuss. Great talking to you again, and look forward to our next conversation.
Okay, sounds great, Richard.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe at strangeplanetpodcast.com.